And now, Bob Grant.
WABC, New York.
And let's be heard. Good afternoon, everyone. Telephone lines are open. The number to call in New York, 563-WABC. If you're calling from New Jersey, 489-WABC. In a program dedicated to free and open exchange of ideas and of opinions, in the belief that as American citizens, you have a right to hear and to be heard. And what is on your mind this afternoon? It's almost drowned out by the theme there. That's why I was chuckling a little bit. Maybe it would be better to just play our theme from now until sign-off time. What is there to talk about anyway? First of all, before I say another word, I want to thank Morris Bernstein of Brooklyn, New York, out there on Surf Avenue. I want to thank Morris. I hope you're listening, Morris. He sends this: Dear Bob, as a longtime listener, on this anniversary, this ship model I've had for many years, I now pass it on to you. It reflects my thoughts, coinciding with yours, as ever, Morris Bernstein, and it is a very attractive replica of the Spanish galleon, the Santa Maria, which was the flagship of Christopher Columbus when the three-ship fleet sailed for the New World. Well, today is Columbus Day. It's not the national holiday that some other days are, but to many it is indeed a time to observe. Historically, I wonder if we can be permitted to indulge in a little realistic history and get away from the revisionism which is being forced upon us by a relatively small group of racists and vicious people who want to hold us accountable, who want to punish us because European culture has been, and certainly in the 15th century was, the predominant culture in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not apologize, as many of my contemporaries do, for being white. I do not apologize for the fact that my ancestors came from the continent of Europe. I do not apologize for the fact that Christopher Columbus discovered this continent, and by saying he discovered it in terms of telling the people back in Europe what was here. Because what was here was the most beautiful land on the face of the earth, this continent. What was here were disparate Indian tribes, and I say nothing to put them down whatsoever, but the culture that the Indian tribes had in no way would have brought about a reversal of the discovery, if you know what I mean. I have been predicting for years that they would try to outlaw Columbus Day in America, and some gavones, and you know who you are, said, ain't gonna be. Well, let me tell you about what happened in Denver, Colorado. In Denver, Colorado on Saturday, they were going to have a parade commemorating. By the way, I don't like parades, but that's neither here nor there. They were going to have a parade honoring the 500th anniversary of the voyage of Christopher Columbus. And they didn't. Do you know why they called it off? They called it off because some American Indians threatened there would be trouble. Let me make this very clear, my fellow Americans, my fellow citizens. Let me make this very clear. I have no problem with Russell Means or any other Indian person having a point of view which condemns our celebration of Columbus Day. I think Russell Means or any other person of Indian ancestry has every right to denounce it, has every right to criticize it, has every right to belittle it, has every right to say any damn thing he wants to say. But why did the Italian Americans in Denver cancel the parade? Because the authorities said there will be trouble. In other words, they would attack the wagon train. In other words, they would scalp the marchers. Now, I use the term Italian Americans, and Richard Capozzola has written 5 centuries, a brilliant compilation of fact on 5 centuries of Italian American history, 1492 to 1992, a chronology of events, little-known facts and stories about a people who contributed to the greatness of America, and then chronicles as just published, 1492, Italians in America. And I could go on and on and on about the contributions of Italians, but that is not my interest here. My interest here is that we are truly falling apart. We are truly deteriorating as a nation. We are indeed slipping and sliding toward third worldism when a group of people can't even have a parade because they're afraid that another group of people will attack the parade physically. And that is the point of what I'm talking about right now. Let me say something else. I don't understand why there are 2 parades here in the city of New York. Sunday, Hispanic Columbus Parade, and then today, the regular Columbus Day Parade. I think they should combine. I don't think of Columbus Day as an Italian day, and I don't think of the day before Columbus Day as a so-called Hispanic day. I think it would be absolutely marvelous if next year they had one parade and they had people of Spanish origin marching alongside. Why do they do that? Hey, Bill Fugazi, since you elected yourself as the big shot or whatever, or as a Gumbara of Gumbaras, why do you do that? Why do you make it strictly an Italian day? It's a day we all should celebrate. But the news that politically correct groups in the United States are greeting the 500th anniversary of Columbus's discovery of America by denouncing the great explorer as an imperialist exploiter is laughed at in Europe, greeted with incredulity. After all, had he not discovered America, there would be no tax-fed intelligentsia of progressive Americans to denounce him. They would not, as their own jargon has it, have been called into existence. At the very moment the year 1992 of our modern calendar of Europe might have seen mild protests somewhere in Mexico about the ritual cutting out of human hearts in the Aztec capital. And more outrageously, a debating society in Cusco might have had the temerity to suggest that vigorous suppression of unnatural vice under the strict laws of the Inca Empire was an unjust repression of the indigenous traditions of its subject peoples. After all, if you can eat peyote, and it's even possible that the Cherokees, if untouched by the treacheries of Jacksonian democracy, would have been boycotting Eskimo-carved walrus tusks as a protest against whale hunting by kayak. Yes, Columbus did discover America, and it was settled by the Spaniards and the Portuguese, the Swedes and the Irish, the Ukrainians and the Ashkenazi Jews, all of whom would have starved at home had there been no new world for them to emigrate to. A movement of peoples on this kind of scale necessarily involves the displacement and disturbance of aboriginal peoples. But the whole of human history consists of such movements. Keep that in mind. And I don't want to bore you with a lot of history, but I have the facts to support what I've just said, I assure you. I haven't mentioned the debate. I've been on the air for several minutes. I haven't mentioned the debate. What is there to mention? What is there to say? I have seen several newspapers, not only New York newspapers, but others as well. And outside of the Sun Sentinel of Fort Lauderdale, it seems as though everybody was trying to spin the debate against the president. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that outside of his great performance against Geraldine Ferraro on October 11th, 1984, George Bush, in my opinion, is not from the debaters. But on the other hand, what did Bill Clinton do that was so magnificent except look like a wind-up doll? Now, I have to agree with with one newspaper that said Perot steals the show in the first debate. I have to agree. He did steal the show, and if it weren't for him, everybody would have fallen asleep. So I'm glad he's in the debate. And a gentleman said to me at the airport, as I was out of town, he said, you know, if that monkey didn't drop out of the race back in July, he'd probably be ahead. Of course, the reason he was so loose is he has nothing to lose. He's not worried about anything. And that's the way people win at anything, whether it's an athletic contest or a debate or anything. When they go in not afraid to lose, they win. But if you go in so afraid you're going to lose, you do lose. Now, if I was the president's advisor, I'd say, hey, George, you got nothing to lose. Let it all hang out. Be yourself. Don't worry about a gas. Don't worry. Anyway, easy for me to talk, huh? Hey, this portion of Bob Grant Show brought to you by the Discover Car. And say hello to Bob, checking in now from Brooklyn. Hello, Bob.
Hi, Bob. Bob, before I make my comments, they did a poll I read in the Times yesterday. 2/3 of the American people still consider Columbus a hero, so I think that's good news.
Yes, it is.
And also, I'm of Italian-American heritage, although I am an American first. And I'm sick and tired of people denouncing Europeans, and especially Italian-Americans. I happened to tune in very briefly yesterday on the Gil Noble show, which I can't stand. And they were actually Italian-Americans denouncing Columbus and saying that they felt guilty about what happened to the Indians. And I think that was disgusting. One other thing, Bob, can I just read a short paragraph of what they're doing in Berkeley, California?
Well, I know what they're doing in Berkeley, California. Today is Indigenous.
Right.
They've renamed it, instead of Discovery Day or Columbus Day, Indigenous American Day.
Indigenous Peoples Day, and they're building a monument on Turtle Island to commemorate an American Indian story about how the world was created on the back of a turtle.
Yeah. Well, we've come to expect this bizarre anti-American counterculture crap from those sickies out there. Maybe we could just sever Berkeley and shoot it into space. Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
It's David on the line from Irvington. Yes, hello, David.
Hello, Bob. I want to say Happy Columbus Day to you. And I am not ashamed to say that I believe in Columbus Day. I may not march in the parade in New York, but I can understand. In fact, I can. It's all about political correctness. And it's just a shame that a man whose only crime was coming to another part of the world and discovering something is treated as such an animal, as some of the things that these racists and these history revisionists are saying about how he brought diseases and all other kind of crap. It's just unbelievable. And the thing about it is they don't even have any documentation to back them up, to back them up. You know, they're talking off the top of their head. Absolutely no documentation. And I enjoyed that speech that you made a couple of weeks ago on I'm an Italian American.
I think we'll play that later. I think we'll get the recording and play it. It certainly would be appropriate to play it today, David.
Oh, absolutely. And I just want to wish all of the Bob Grant listeners a happy and a healthy day. We had nothing to apologize for. Christopher Columbus was a hero and a fine human being, and we must not be swayed by these history revisionists, because there's more of us than there are of them.
You're a good man, David. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, indeed. You know what's it? What blows my mind are several things about this, not the least of which is Columbus died, I believe, in 1506. Any of you historians out there care to confirm or refute that? You certainly may. But I believe he died in the year 1506. And most of the transgressions that are blamed on him, and I put the word transgressions in quotes, occurred after the year 1506. So even if all they say were true, how in the world do you blame Christopher Columbus, who, by the way, wrote to the monarchs of Spain during his third voyage, quote, I have discovered it is not round, meaning the earth, but rather shaped like a pear. Now, incredibly, ladies and gentlemen, Columbus's genius is finally confirmed 461 years later when the Vanguard satellite sent information to the Goddard Space Center. That was in 1959. And a Harvard astronomer stated, the Earth is shaped like a pear with high points at the equator. And yet way back in 1498, Columbus figured that out. He was a great navigator.
For Columbus and his discovery, and George Bush and the economy. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the debate yesterday, and I think there's a couple places where George Bush, if he wasn't so presidential, could have really zinged it to Clinton. First, when he announced that he was married for 17 years, I think George Bush could have said, well, I'd like to congratulate you on your anniversary, but, you know, people said it would never last. Item two, when he was talking about his brother and that he was going through drug rehabilitation, he could have also said, well, I hate to see that, you know, drugs run in the family, but you should have told your brother not to inhale. And point three, I guess, which was really kind of Clinton was, I was watching a debate, and I was wondering whether Clinton was in a debate up to that point where he was talking about his patriotism and George Bush's father, you know, going against the McCarty people. He could have said, well, I know my father, and he wouldn't have approved of what you were doing either. So I think he was a little too kind at the debates. And
well, I think that would have boomeranged. I think if he did any one of the three or all three of what you suggested, he may have gotten some laughs, but he would have gotten more people going, oh, no, it would not have been proper for him to do that. Thank you very much, Nick.
Okay.
It's Joe checking in right now. Hello, Joe.
Yes, good day. In actuality, Christopher Columbus was a hero. He made 3 voyages, and on his second and third one, it was basically to find a shorter route for the massive trade that was taking place in Europe. And the fact is, he did prove that the salt waters of the world were actually one, not 2, 3, or 4 as they originally thought. So history is always barking at the original man, and Christopher Columbus was the one, and God bless him.
All right. By the way, his son Diego Diego Columbus, his oldest son, freed about 150 Indians from South Carolina, which were set to be enslaved by plantation owners in Hispaniola.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a little-known fact, but I just thought I'd mention it in passing. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Robert, you're at WABC. Hello.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Grant. I'd like to give my opinion regarding last night's debate. First, I'll identify myself up front as a Bush partisan. I intend to vote for the president in November. I think last night Ross Perot spoke energetically. He was enthusiastic, and he had a great stage presence, but he really just spoke in platitudes and didn't offer any specifics. George Bush, though it wasn't a great performance, I still think he did very well. I thought he was cool, calm, and collected. I thought he came across presidential, and I thought a lot of his answers were pretty much on the mark. As far as Bill Clinton is concerned, I think he stunk out the hall. He looked tired. He looked haggard. He had bags under his eyes. His suit jacket didn't fit properly. He spoke in a raspy voice. He offered nothing but cliches. He hesitated a lot on his answers, particularly his answers regarding foreign policy questions. I thought they were atrocious. I questioned his ability to even locate Europe, Asia, Africa on a map. And I think his reference to Joe McCarthy and to President Bush's father, I thought that was tawdry, and I thought it was a total irrelevancy. And the biggest laugh of the night was when he asked how his definition of a family, he ended it by saying, "Oh, hello, Hillary, happy 17th wedding anniversary." When he said that, all I could think to myself was, yeah, Bill, give my regards to Jennifer Flowers, you phony creep. And that's my opinion, Mr. Grant.
Well, there were other people who had the opposite view. They thought that was a shrewd move on his part to bring up his anniversary and to wish her a happy anniversary. They thought, hey, look, it's transparent. It was planned.
Absolutely.
We know that it was planned, but there are a lot of gavones out there who watched it who thought it was a spontaneous, genuine thing.
Well, they are gavones, and God help us if this guy gets in the White House.
Well, then God better help us. Thank you very much, Robert.
Thank you.
President Bush's deputy campaign chairman, Mr. Yider, your honest reaction to last night's first presidential debate.
Okay, Bob. I thought it was an indecisive exercise. I think they had a lot more sparring than anything else, and I really believe the heart of the debates is going to come later. But just to give you a quick reaction on the three, I thought Ross Perot was surprisingly good as compared to his expectations. He certainly did a fine job of laying out in an understandable way some of the challenges facing the country, although I didn't hear him lay out very many proposed solutions. Governor Clinton, I thought, was trying too hard to look presidential, look and act presidential, so much so that I felt he came across a little bit wooden and pretty programmed on a lot of his answers. President Bush, I felt, was insufficiently aggressive on some of the economic issues, particularly in challenging Clinton's economic program, which I believe has a lot of shortcomings. So all in all, Bob, I think all three of them have room for improvement going into the next debate, and I hope they'll demonstrate it. Everybody's falling out of their chairs around here. You know why? Because you double-crossed everybody. You're supposed to be a spin doctor, and you're supposed to give us, and I despise the word, but you're supposed to give us the spin that builds up your man and tears down the others. I want to commend you. This is a very candid response. Thank you. I'm just not a traditional spin doctor. I just think it's important to be credible with people, and so that's what I try to do.
Well, indeed. Now, you said something interesting there. You said you would have preferred that the president had been more aggressive in that economic exchange. I have seen the president in different postures, and I like him better when he seems to forget there's a camera grinding away and people with microphones and is himself. When he's himself, he seems to be more effective.
I agree with that. He's a tremendously impressive individual when he is himself, and he's got the stature and experience and background and the leadership qualities that just cannot be duplicated by the other two candidates. What he has to do is project those in this setting and, of course, in the campaign generally, and I hope that happens in the final two debates. I think he did that last night, but we didn't get the differentiation last night that I believe is justified by the facts. In other words, if he has a chance to really be George Bush and lay out George Bush's programs, which make a lot of sense in both international and domestic policy, he's clearly going to come across as the most impressive of those three. I thought he did that last night, but not with the kind of differential we ought to have.
You know, it's easy to sit on the sidelines and tell the other guy what he ought to do and what would work and what wouldn't work. But it seems to me that if the president would turn to me and ask me what I had to say, I'd say, you know, Mr. President, you've got nothing to lose. Let it all hang out.
I think he needs to do that, particularly on the economic questions, because that's where people are saying, you know, what are you going to do for us, Mr. President, over the next 4 years? We're dissatisfied with the rate of economic growth we have right now. This has got to change. Well, that is correct. The question is, change to what? And if we're going to throw the dice with unknown quantities like Clinton and Perot, we better have a reason to do so. And I happen to think that both the economic program of Clinton and the economic program of Perot have a lot of problems. I think the president has the strongest economic program to lead this country to a higher rate of economic growth and greater productivity over the next 4 years. He's got to lay that out, and I think he's got to very aggressively point out what's wrong with the Perot program and what's wrong with the Clinton program.
We were watching C-SPAN presentation of the 1984 debate, October 11th of that year, between then Vice President George Bush and Vice Presidential candidate Geraldine Ferraro. And George Bush was so effective, so dynamic, so convincing. People were looking at it saying, well, why wasn't he that way last night?
I remember that debate, too. I watched it as well, and I thought he did an excellent job that night. I thought he was being too gracious last night. It was almost as if folks said, well, gee, you're behind, Mr. President. It's important that you look relaxed and self-confident. And I thought he was almost too relaxed. And so I don't want him to be uptight the next time he goes into a debate, but I'd sure like to see him really come along and crunch his opposition on some of these issues. For example, when Governor Clinton brings up his effort to raise taxes on people with $200,000 incomes and up, it's important that the president come along and say, Governor, your numbers do not add up. There is no way you can raise $150 billion by taxing only people with $200,000 incomes and up. You're going to tax middle-class folks. Now, he made that point last night, but I think he needed to make it with much greater vigor. And I think on other things like Governor Clinton keeps saying that we went from the highest wages in the world a few years ago down to 13th. Well, the only reason that comes about is because of shifts in exchange rates, and that's primarily due to the Germans raising their own interest rates. That's not due to anything that President Bush has done. And when you look at real wages, where they're still the highest in the world, he needs to correct some of those distortions when they occur. And I hope he does that, because otherwise people are going to go into that voting booth and make decisions on the basis of incomplete facts.
I could give you some information you probably already have, but the word is that James Carville and others in the Democrat camp have said anytime the president gets on the offensive, accuse him of being desperate, and that'll slow him down. Have you heard that?
Yes, and in fact, they've done that several times already. We've heard this commentary from Mr. Stephanopoulos and Mr. Carville that the man is just desperate. This came up, by the way, on Clinton's conduct over in London. The comment, the response or retort to that was, this is an act of desperation on the part of the president. Well, in my view, that's a legitimate concern, how potential presidential candidates conduct themselves. Even though that was a long time back, it goes to wisdom and judgment and maturity and all those kinds of things. So I don't think we can accept that. That's simply an inappropriate response by the Clinton folks.
Well, I would hope that your camp wouldn't let that word stop you in your tracks.
Yeah, no way. No way. And, there's still 3 weeks to go, and in my view, we've got by far the better substantive arguments on a whole host of these policy questions. We just need to get them out. There's been nothing wrong with the president's domestic agenda from the very beginning. As a matter of fact, I think he's got the broadest and deepest domestic agenda of any president in Washington during my 22 years of coming in and out of this place. It's just that a lot of Americans do not now recognize that and want to, I believe, unwisely consider alternatives when in reality those alternatives are not nearly as attractive.
One final question, Clayton Yiter, and that has to do with tomorrow's debate, which, of course, is the vice presidential debate. They say that you want to go into a debate with low expectations. If that's the case, then you're in good position because your man, the vice president, the expectations are about as low as they can get. How do you think he's holding up with that kind of confidence in him?
Well, maybe we'll learn something from the Perot performance last night, because the same thing happened there. He went in with very low expectations, more than realized those, and of course got awfully good ratings today by Americans based on his performance last night, even though I don't really think he's going to be a major factor in the election process. So we've got perhaps a comparable situation tomorrow for the vice president, but expectations or no, I really believe he's going to do very well tomorrow night.
As far as you can tell, I don't know when you've last seen him, does he seem nervous about the prospect, or is he pretty calm?
I haven't talked to him in the last few days, but just having spent so much time with him over the last 3.5 years or so, I believe he'll go into that exercise not necessarily calm, but with a lot more confidence than has been exhibited typically in his public appearances. As you may recall, when he first became vice president, one of the critiques that people had was that he just didn't exude self-confidence. Some of that may be, of course, because the media was beating up on him a lot, but whatever, I believe that was a legitimate concern. His self-confidence has grown tremendously over the last 3 years or thereabouts, and I believe you'll see ample self-confidence tomorrow and a high level of knowledge of the issues. I suspect you'll see the same kind of Dan Quayle that you saw in his speech at the Republican National Convention in Houston.
Well, he's got to be at his best because he's going against a very vicious, tough guy.
Well, he is. I do believe that the vice president has some qualities that will show through. He is a very personable individual, and people are going to like Dan Quayle. As you know, Senator Gore sometimes comes across with some pomposity.
He sure does.
And that was one of his problems in his presidential campaign, and we hope some of that shows through tomorrow night.
One final point, Clayton Yiter. I'm going to be talking in about a half an hour to Jonathan Bush, the president's brother, who is the campaign director for the president's campaign in New York State. There is no campaign in New York State. He's not coming here. What would you like me to tell Mr. Bush?
Well, even without the presence of either the president or the vice president in a big way, we shouldn't take any state for granted, either winning or losing. So tell him to keep working and working hard.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Good to talk to you, Bob.
Clayton Yiter, President Bush's deputy campaign chairman, and his surprisingly candid response to last night's first presidential debate. Yes.
Bob, I don't know where these pollsters go to get opinions after the debate, but they must have watched a different debate than myself. People were impressed with Ross Perot, because he made them laugh a couple of times and they liked his demeanor, but he said the same old statement. He always does. Send me to Washington and I'll take care of it. But he has no specifics as usual. And Bill Clinton was painfully trying to look presidential with his fist going up and down. His responses sounded cryptic and practiced. And all he kept saying was the new catchphrase, we need change, change. And I almost turned gray when he spoke of the economic progress and achievements of his state of Arkansas. The last liberal Democrat to run for president called the economic progress of his state the Massachusetts miracle, which never existed either. And the two of them couldn't help pandering to the special interest groups, Bill Clinton bragging that he appointed 2 AIDS-infected women to his staff, and Perot chastising the senators who had the audacity to expose Anita Hill as a liar. And the president was the only one with the guts to talk about personal behavior when it came to AIDS. And he made fools of the two of them, too, when it came to foreign policy, exposing their lack of insight and experience and knowledge of all the facts by having to correct a number of their misstatements. And I think the president looked relaxed and in charge. And there's a new poll out this morning, Bob, that may make you feel a little better. 64% of Americans are looking forward to the remainder of the debates to help them make up their minds. So maybe the American people control the biased media.
Okay, it's 4 o'clock. And, okay, I'm going to ask you straight out, honestly, how do you think your brother did last night?
I thought it was absolutely terrific, Bob. I thought he did a first-rate job. He was the President of the United States. He handled himself as the President of the United States, and we were very, very proud of him.
How did you feel when your father's name, your father Prescott Bush, how did you feel when Bill Clinton brought up your father's name in the debate?
Well, I had to laugh because what Bill Clinton, what the president has suggested about Bill Clinton is exactly the kind of thing my father would have loathed and abhorred. I mean, the fact that the man would lie repeatedly, give one story after another about why he didn't go into the Army, and then, to suggest that this was a McCarthy-esque type of thing because the president took example to something that Bill Clinton did and was discovered doing. The thing about McCarthy is that he was guilty of accusing people of things they did not do. And so my father found that intolerable. Being a bully is something that my father would have found intolerable. But getting out and lying is something he also would have found intolerable, and that's what Clinton's doing, and Clinton has had the chutzpah to turn it around. You got to give him credit.
Yeah. It's, of course, he's got the media also on his side, which doesn't really focus the attention the way attention should be focused, in my opinion.
Well, Bob, the media are really, in our great society, the referees. You have referees in a football game and umpires, and they're supposed to be, unbiased and fair arbiters of the outcome, and they're in there to referee. It's a great system, but if the referees get paid off in a football game, then you're going to have a pretty sorry game. And it's the same thing is if the media gets biased, overwhelmingly biased, their role is no longer effective, and so Americans are going to have to somehow see through what's happening here. I wrote a letter to the editor in the New York Times book review yesterday, and they published it, and I must say that they did. I put P.S. Please publish in its entirety or not at all, and they did. They published it in its entirety. But here was a guy reviewing a terrible book about the president, which was filled with distortions and inaccuracies, and the reviewer, not only is praising the book, but goes on to add his own 2 bits in his review. So I had to write and say, wait a minute, what are you doing here? This is a review of a book, and the reviewer is all of a sudden a political pundit criticizing the president on his own. I mean, this is what you're up against, even the book review. So what are you going to do? You're going to win because people know it, and people know that it's not fair. You get it everywhere, just as you've made that observation. I get it from people in the gas station. I was just talking to an automobile dealer that's changing some tires on a car, and he observed it. Everybody knows it.
Did you talk to your brother before or after the debate, Jonathan?
I have not talked to him yet, Bob, but I hope to get a word with him here before too long. Not too long from now. And I did talk to him a little bit before, a couple of days before.
All right. Now, the last time I looked, you were the chairman or co-chairman of the Bush re-election committee, New York campaign.
Yeah.
But as Fred Dicker points out, something I've been saying, where is the president? Why isn't he campaigning in New York State?
Well, you run a campaign by going for your target states first, as you know, and protecting your base first, then going for your target states, and then doing whatever else you feel you need to do. The final stages, we still have 3.5 weeks, and certainly New York State is not a target state. That's a political decision. However, we want to win New York, and we think New York has we have a very good chance in New York. We've got 5 times the budget in New York that we had last time to spend, And so, but we're not, but the president has got to, first of all, do those, take those two courses of action before he comes to New York.
So what you're saying is you don't feel that New York is winnable the way you do, obviously New Jersey's winnable, but New York is not.
Let's not put it that way, Bob.
Well.
Every state is winnable, and we're going to win New York. But in terms of the president's priority at this point, you have to protect your base, number one, and you have to go after your target states very hard, number two.
Well, there are a lot of local GOP people who are frustrated because they'd like the president to come to the state. After all, you've got a fighting U.S. senator battling for re-election.
Yeah.
You've got congressmen running.
Well, the president, wait a minute. The president came here for a fundraiser at Al D'Amato's urgent request in July, and it was a very fine gathering, and the president made possible a very big crowd for Senator D'Amato, and I know he was deeply appreciative of that.
How do you feel about the fact the senator is getting several Democrats? It seems as though a Democrat every day endorses him. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that they're doing the right thing. I mean, Senator D'Amato has been an outstanding senator for New York State. Absolutely outstanding. When you consider what the man has achieved, it's mind-boggling. So that I would think lots of Democrats would want to sign on for him. And people that know the workings of politics, Ed Koch. You may not be a great Ed Koch fan, Bob. I don't know. But he's a guy that's been in the political mainstream and recognizes when somebody can really achieve something, and D'Amato has been that person. There's no question about it.
All right. Now, getting back to Fred Dicker, he reported that all efforts to get the president to do a New York campaign trip seem to have failed.
Well, can I tell you something? I like Fred Dicker, and I've gotten to know him pretty well. But he also works for the New York Post. And I've seen the most outrageous things in the Post. I mean, really outrageous things about the president. So I got to be a little suspect of what anybody working for the Post says. I hate to put it that way, but I really am. I'm just suspect of anything they say. I really think they're marching in lockstep at the Post.
Well, the Post editorials generally are supportive of the administration.
Well, I saw one the other day that wasn't supportive. They ran 3 columns on a frivolous, pointless allegation about the president that was so far wrong and off the mark. And then they not only ran it, but they reran it. And anybody that knows the president and knows the First Family was so outraged by this thing, and they kept running it. And it was the worst kind of thing I've ever seen. So I'm very down on the Post.
Well, you haven't told us whether the president has a definite date or not, but you say it's open, it's possible?
Sure, Bob. You're darn right it's possible, and you just, the shifting sands right in now. You can't, the looking glass is clouded. You just don't know exactly how things are shifting and where he's got to be. In the final stage, there's no set agenda at this point.
Let me ask you, just as one citizen to another, really, I'm trying to put myself in the president's place, or people in the administration.
Yeah.
And day in, day out, there's one poll after another. It gets more depressing all the time. How do you stand up under that?
Well, you just have to realize that people are making up their minds. The last poll that I saw had Clinton with an 8-9 point lead, whatever it was, but it had a huge undecided margin. And you have to realize that people are making up their minds, and you have to realize that they're going to focus in more and more and more on the difference of these two candidates, and they're going to go with the man that has earned their trust. What's happened in this world is mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling, and it's been done by a captain with a steady hand at the tiller all the way through some of the roughest sailing in international politics and diplomacy in the history of mankind. It's one of the greatest achievements ever. The world is set for a dramatic surge into growth and economic freedom and capitalism throughout the world, and the President Bush has made that possible. And so you just say people have got to realize it, and they will, because it's 3 weeks to go before this election.
So you're confident your brother will get a second term?
He's going to get a second term. You're darn right he's going to get a second term, because he deserves it. And the American people know that, Bob, and they're going to go vote for him.
Well, I certainly hope you're right, Jonathan Bush. You know where I stand, and I appreciate you coming to the telephone. And
listen, talking to you has always been a privilege, Bob. You're one of the really great people in this whole business, and everything you do is terrific. I'm a great admirer of yours, as you know.
If you run into George Clark...
Oh, I love him, yeah.
Yeah, just say, you know, Bob Grant said, what happened to you, George?
Well, I won't... Well, wait a minute. He's one of your greatest fans, too, George.
Yeah, but I never hear from him anymore.
Well, I'm going to tell him he's got to get on the phone and call you up, because he told me, he said, Jonathan, you got to get on the Bob Grant show and talk to Bob. Tell him the story. I'm definitely going to tell Clark. He's terribly remiss in not keeping in touch with you.
Because George, in my opinion, is one of the all-time greats. You know that.
Wonderful? He's one of the funniest men alive. Also, a guy with as good judgment as anybody. But he's no more fun than George.
Well, I remember it was October 11th, 1984. He went down to Philadelphia, rode down there with the vice president, the then vice president. And I think you were there too.
Yeah.
And we were looking at a tape of that debate, and
against Geraldine Ferraro.
Against Geraldine Ferraro, and someone said, "Gee, I wish the president would be as tough as he was in that debate." I get, you know what I get the feeling about your brother, the president?
Yeah.
I get the feeling he's the best gunfighter in town, has the quickest draw, and he's just rode into town, and this upstart is challenging him, and for some reason, he's holding back.
Yeah.
Why is your brother holding back?
Bob, that's pretty good. I think that he will not hold back. I think he'll, first of all, you get the kind of, as he says, you got to sort of understand the mission a little bit. Feel him out a little. I don't want to say any more.
Okay.
I think he'll be very pleased with what he does.
Yeah, I'm going to send you a bill if I have to go get corrective surgery. Hello, Jerry. You're on WABC.
Yeah, Bob, I have a problem with the way you did that teddy bear commercial. They pay for the advertising on WABC, and that's an American manufacturing company. And we need all the manufacturing in the United States that we can get. And your station runs ads all the time, that they're looking for advertisers on WABC. And you don't seem to have a problem endorsing these ambulance chasers. Anyway, I called them up, and they've gotten other calls about this with people complaining. And they're going to call me back tomorrow, and I told them that I'll buy a teddy bear from them if you continue to do the ads.
You're a schmuck. Get off my phone. What a jerk. Marie, you're on WABC. Hello.
What a tough act for me to have to follow now. This teddy bear. I'll do the commercial for you, and you put me on. I was watching that last night, Bob, and all I could say is, he looks like he's rehearsing. He talks like I do when I get nervous. He stops and thinks. He's got, like as if he has Alzheimer's disease, Clinton. He's the majestic, eternal lover.
Well, we're not hearing you too well, Marie. You have a bad hookup here.
I know. Is that better?
Yes, it's better.
He's like the majestic lover, masterfully stroking us. And I would rather change my underwear than change for him. I think Bush is the guy that we have to get in there, Bob. You have to keep up the...
Wait a minute, what'd you say about your underwear? What?
Don't repeat that.
What?
I would rather change my underwear than change to Bill Clinton.
Oh.
I think people are changing for the wrong reasons. I think that Bush could be everything that any Clinton could be, and that we need to have somebody of his caliber to be to hold the highest office position of the President of the United States. I just can't stand watching Clinton. I don't know. I like to read faces, and I just read something in his face. I see something missing, and it just bothers me if he became president.
Well, you got a lot of company, at least from me anyway. I thank you, Marie. I think what we're going to do, just to show you the propensity of the audience, one day, maybe later this week, we'll do a poll. It's not scientific. We'll just take the calls as they come in. And I think you'll find that the poll will be totally different than what we're reading in the newspapers. Abraham, you're on WABC. Hello.
Hello. I've been waiting a while. I was kind of amused by your ad about teddy bears. Over here in the Poconos, you can get some real live cubs. Only I wouldn't advise anybody to play with them.
Hey, look, in all seriousness, somebody had one in the office. They are very cute. They're lovely. They really are.
Yeah.
But I just feel silly at my age doing that commercial. I think I think they should have notified me ahead of time to prepare me for that. That's in all honesty, I have to be blunt enough to tell you that.
I wanted to mention that, I really thought that the point that Bush was making about character's integrity and his character, I thought was really totally important and compelling. I mean, Clinton has exhibited absolutely no thoughtfulness whatsoever about the awful mistakes the left made in the wake of Vietnam and the killing fields of Cambodia and the millions that were murdered and brutalized by that truly evil communist regime. Has he ever reflected upon that at all? Clinton has an awful lot of baggage, it seems to me, on the new left. And he says that, he's going to do like JFK, and he's going to bring into the White House the so-called best and the brightest. And you know who they are. They're all those tenured radicals, the Harvard academics who brought you the, theoretical basis for a quota-based nation, for their games of litigation lotto to enforce their crazy legislative regime.
It was the best and the brightest that got us bogged down in Southeast Asia. Lynn, thank you very much.
Yes.
Stuart, you're on WABC. Hello.
Hello, Bob. I really want to thank you. You've been inspiring to me. My wife and I were sitting and watching the debate last night, and the one comment that she made, I think, really brought it home for me. She said, President looks really uncomfortable. I said, no, I think he's very cool and calm. She goes, no, he looks like, what the heck am I doing standing up here with these two bozos? One who bailed out and came back, and the other one who won't vouch for his past. I think the president is really quite uncomfortable, and we just had to laugh about it. I thought it was kind of funny.
Time magazine is part of the liberal media and very eager to see Hillary Clinton as First Lady. There's no doubt about that. So what did they do? They came out with their post-first debate issue, and the cover shows George Bush looking at Bill Clinton and Ross Perot looking at Bill Clinton while Bill Clinton is talking, as though the two of them are his followers.
Right.
They could have picked any number of photos, but they chose to pick that photo. And these photos that you people see, whether they're in magazines or newspapers, they're not there by accident. They're there because the editor wants them there.
Well, we are victims to the left-leaning press, and I want to thank you for helping set the record straight.
Well, we'll try. Thank you very much. And let's say hello to Alan on the line from New York City. Yes, hello, Alan.
Yes, hello, Bob. Bob, I'm a very strong Bill Clinton supporter, and a few weeks ago you had George Will on your show, and he made a very interesting comment. He commented that Bill Clinton is the Rocky Marciano of modern-day politics, and I think Bill proved that last night, Bob. I think even though he might have not won by a knockout last night, he sure won a unanimous decision. And my feeling is if he continues in these debates to either knock George Bush out or win unanimous decisions, he's going to, I think, win that tremendous landslide victory in November. And I don't think Bush has a chance.
At WABC, we're forging ahead with David checking in right now from New York City. Hello, David.
Yeah, you talk about the left-leaning media. Last week, I heard you slander Hillary Clinton, comparing her sexual orientation to Martina Navratilova.
No, I didn't compare anything.
Yes,
I just said there was a rumor floating around that if Bill Clinton lost, she would leave Bill to go with Martina. That's all I said.
Yeah, but what kind of sleazemongering is that to repeat that kind of sleazy comment?
That's what I said.
Yeah, you just proved what kind of warped, demented individual that you are.
Well, if I'm a warped and demented individual, what in the world do you waste your time listening to me for?
I'm not going to listen to you anymore. Goodbye.
Thank you. That's the best news I've had. With that, he hung up on me. I have to laugh at people who criticize me because I talk about the left-wing media and then say, what about you? I'm one guy. I do a talk program on a local radio station. You want to compare me with Time Magazine, Newsweek, the Washington Post, the New York Times, ABC, CBS, NBC, and all those other various so-called reporters who are not really reporters but news people with an agenda? Come on.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
Remember? Then George Bush gave us the second biggest tax increase in history.
we will be able to produce 30 million jobs in the next 8 years.
Then George Bush gave us the worst economy in 50 years. Unemployment in New Jersey is 9%.
My mission is 30 and 8. 30 million jobs in the next 8 years.
Well, in the last 4 years, there are 259,000 fewer jobs in New Jersey. 259,000 fewer jobs under George Bush.
I want a kinder and gentler nation.
Higher taxes, 259,000 fewer jobs. That's kinder and gentler? It's time for a change. We can't afford 4 more years of George Bush.
Paid for by a Clinton-Gore 92 committee.
On WABC, hello.
Hello, Bob. Haven't talked to you in a long time. I watched the debate last night on videotape, and I was pretty disgusted with the response George Bush got when he tried to pin Slick Willie on his trip to Moscow. But I think about it, and I think the reason is pretty clear. The media have been selling this hawk versus dove concept of the politics of the Cold War, or they sold that for the last 24 years, ever since 1968, when Lyndon Johnson was the failure as the commander-in-chief. Lyndon Johnson was the worst commander-in-chief we had in the country, I think, ever. And because of that, he got us into Vietnam and couldn't get us out. When he did that, he broke the Cold War consensus. John F. Kennedy said, let all people know, whether they wish us well or ill, that the United States will bear any burden, support any friend, oppose any foe in the defense of liberty. I thought he was exaggerating there, but when Lyndon Johnson tried to prove it, he tried to prove it on the one hand, but on the other hand, he was afraid to actually win.
Well, he was a fake, he was a phony, he was a fraud, because he kept saying we seek no wider war. Meanwhile, he was escalating the number of troops over there. He was escalating the war, and yet it was a war that was not intended to be won. It made no sense at all, and I thank you for the call, Len. And Joe from Fort Lee, hello.
Hello, Bob. Listen, today, Bob, it made me very proud to be an Italian-American. I marched in the Columbus Day Parade. And it really was a slap in the face to all those revisionists who trying to destroy the name of Columbus. It did my heart great to march and see the thousands and thousands of people lining the way. You have all of these people here. They're trying to take away the last vestige of Western culture. Columbus was a great man. And what they're trying to do, these revisionists, they're trying to take history out of context. The time that Columbus lived in was a different time than now. There were different value systems. And for these idiots who pretend to be professors and doctors of history, they don't know what they're talking about. You cannot take one period of history and push it into another. It's a different time, a different place. And Columbus, you have to remember, if you look at that Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, 90-foot ships made out of wood, he crossed the ocean in those. Bob, if you ever went out even into Barnegat Bay on a small boat and the winds come up and that sea comes up and you're in those 7 and 8 foot waves, you know what kind of courage it takes to really brave the oceans. But that's not the full reason I'm calling, Bob. I'm calling because Operation Shortchange struck gold the other day on October 8th, Bob.
Well, we'll have to hear this, the other side of the news, Joe. You spent so much time patting yourself on the back for marching in the parade. We didn't have time to hear your message on Operation.
I'll wait.
Yes, Joe. For you, yes.
WABC, New York.
It's 6 o'clock.
From ABC News, I'm Dorothy McIntyre. The death toll has risen in Egypt following today's strong earthquake. As many as 340 people have died. More than 4,000 others were injured. The quake, measuring 5.9, struck about 20 miles southwest of Cairo.
Breaker line, and Dr. Joseph Scelsa is at the other end of the line of the John Calandra Italian-American Institute at the City University of New York. And you say, Dr. Scelsa, that Columbus bashing has gone too far, that Columbus ought to be honored by all Americans for what he did, namely triumphing in the midst of adversity.
Absolutely, Bob. Thank you for having me on.
Are you surprised at the way things have deteriorated to the point now that things such as happened in Denver, Colorado, where a group of Italian Americans wanted to have a Columbus Day march, and they canceled it because they were afraid of what American Indians might do?
Well, I think I think we've unfortunately let go into the extremists have taken over. It shouldn't be that way at all. I don't think that's what happened in New York today at all, though, I might add. I think we have although there's been a lot of protesting that has gone on in the past, you had one of the most organized parades that I've ever seen, but certainly the longest Columbus parade that I've ever been in. I've been in them since I've been a child. And you've had almost every major ethnic group participating in today. And of course, Italian Americans, we led the parade, and we're very proud of that. I think that, unfortunately, it's getting far too much attention. I understand that AP took a poll and found that 2/3 of the Americans feel that Columbus is a hero and should still be honored as well. And of course, I believe that too.
Where have things come apart? Why is the situation what it is?
I think people have been misinformed and misguided. And I think that, unfortunately, the revisionists in their quest to make sure that everyone is included in American society, which they're right, everyone should be, have gone to an extreme, and the extremists have gotten control. And unfortunately, what they don't realize, or if they do realize it, that's even worse, that when they trash Columbus, they're really trashing America, because the two are synonymous. You can't separate one from the other. He's not just an Italian-American hero, which we're very proud of. He's an American hero. He's an international hero. He's a person with unbelievable courage and spirit and a vision that we need today. And I think that's the message that is being overlooked. And no one is at all denying the fact that there have been some problems, of course, that are associated with Columbus and his voyages of discovery. But we must not overlook the great accomplishment of what followed after him, and the way he opened up the door for so many oppressed people all over the world so they could live in this free society.
You would say that to the Columbus bashers, what you've just spoken?
Absolutely. I have no problem with that. I think you probably know already. I'm co-chairman of the Multicultural Advisory Council for the New York City Board of Education. And there are a lot of groups that feel very strongly that they have been overlooked and neglected, and rightly so, because they have been. But I don't think anybody would disagree with the fact that Columbus's accomplishment of crossing an uncharted sea and having the vision and the tenacity to go back 3 times afterwards to make these voyages was a feat that is worth recognizing and something that we should all acknowledge. I don't think anyone would deny that, and I think that's something that we must continue to hold in great reverence and honor the man for what he did. I think the Cardinal today in St. Patrick's Cathedral made mention of the fact that there were atrocities committed amongst the Native Americans as well, and that left unto their own devices, he said, and I'm not sure if it's true, but he said that it would be very likely that Indians, the Indian population at the time, the Native Americans, might have actually annihilated themselves with the Incas and the Aztecs in their brutal ritual society that was practicing human sacrifice, even infant sacrifices. So I don't know that the whole picture has been presented accurately. I think people should start to realize that needs to be done.
It's amazing how they put everybody on the defensive. I have to give the politically correct revisionists, I have to give them credit. They have everybody trained overnight to say Native Americans. I resent that. I'm a Native American. I was born in the United States of America. Why do we keep using that term, Native American?
Well, I think in all respect, Bob, we use it because that's what they would like to be called. I mean, it just is. At one time, Black Americans were happy with being calling Black Americans. Now they prefer to be called African Americans. I don't have a problem with that. If a person wants to be called by that, that's fine.
No, I tell you what the problem is. The problem is not what they want to be called. The problem is, where does that leave the rest of us? What the heck are we? Chopped liver?
No.
I mean, what are we? And academics like you fall right in the line. You don't want to sound like a bad guy. You're an academic, an intellect. So there you are. Saying what they want to say and not really taking up the cudgels, it seems to me.
No, I wouldn't exactly agree with that, Bob. I think you know me, and I'm pretty much up front, and I pretty much stand out very much for what I believe is right for our community. But I also think that if their community wants to be called by a particular name or referred to in a particular way, they have a right to have it happen that way. I think you're right, though. I think the liberal press has gone way too far. I think also that they've made it an issue where I think a lot of people from those particular groups would not be so inclined as to make it such an issue. And I think also in doing so, they trash what we have as an American society and pit us against each other. I think that's the problem.
What really ticked me off was this story out of Denver.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it was canceled, the Columbus Day Parade on Saturday, was canceled, and I quote, according to the Associated Press, because the group of Italian Americans were concerned that the Native Americans would resent it and cause trouble. Local officials were relieved because they did not want a clash of the two groups. Now, what that is saying is that fascist tactics, or the fear of fascist tactics, forced some people to cancel a perfectly legitimate observance.
Well, Bob, I think you know it's never been our way to be protesters, and as Italian Americans. I'm not saying necessarily agreeing with that, by the way. I'm just saying it's never been our way.
Yeah.
And we usually try to do things within the scope of the law, and we try to do things as legitimately and as upfront as possible.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we fall prey, unfortunately, to these groups who yell and scream and holler, and we're afraid to stand up for what is right. You know I'm fighting a fight at City University right now as well, where we're standing up and fighting for the Italian-American faculty that has been denied their rightful share, and we have a class action complaint with the United States Department of Labor. Believe me when I tell you, it took quite a bit of courage for us all to get involved and to do that. And a lot of people, even with our own community, have said, well, maybe you really shouldn't be doing that. I think it's time, though, that when we have our legitimate concerns, whether it's in Denver or in New York or in California or anywhere, that we all stand up and we stand proud and tall for what we believe in. And I'm sorry that they did that in Denver. I really am. I certainly wouldn't want it to happen in New York or any place else.
One final point, and this is strictly my own observation. Why in the world are there two Columbus Day parades? Why does there have to be the so-called Hispanic Columbus Day parade on Sunday, and then the traditional one, which the press characterizes as the Italian parade? I mean, if Columbus was an Italian who sailed for Spain and discovered the New World for all people, why isn't there just one big parade in New York? Why two?
Well, I think this is part of the problem with the way we pit one group against each other. I would think that the one parade should be the one that we have, of course, and that all groups are welcome as they were today. But some people feel that they need to express themselves in their own way. So I guess the city fathers have decided in their wisdom that that's what they would do. I, for one, would like to see it all united and together. I think this is part of what the disuniting of America is all about.
Well, why not have a meeting between people like yourself who...
Well, that's exactly what the students are doing. I have to tell you that.
Get together with the Hispanic group.
They're taking the leadership. The students at Brooklyn College right now are meeting with the Latino community, and they're sitting down to meet with them to discuss exactly this issue. Matter of fact, they'll be having a symposium. I think it's on the 20th or the 21st of this month, where the Latin Americans and the Italian American students are getting together to try to come to a reasonable outcome as to how to deal with Columbus and how to celebrate his arrival appropriately. And I think that's the type of thing that we need to see more of. Sometimes we learn from the young, and I think that's a rather good thing.
Well, all right. I appreciate you coming to the telephone, and I appreciate you.
Well, thanks a lot, Bob. We appreciate you a lot.
Okay.
Take care.
That's Joseph E. Shelsa, who is the professor, and he is of the John Calandra Italian American Institute, City University of New York, right here on WABC, where the time is 20 minutes past 6, and this portion brought to you by the New Jersey Lottery.
Welcome back. Now, let's go to Al for the weather.
The forecast for New Jersey is hot and cold. Back to you.
I present this recording, which we recorded this about 2-3 weeks ago. It's called I Am an Italian American. I hope you enjoy it. Here it is. I am an Italian American. My roots are deep in an ancient soil, drenched by the Mediterranean sun and watered by pure streams from snow-capped mountains. I am enriched by thousands of years of culture. My hands are those of the mason, the artist, the man of the soil. My thoughts have been recorded in the annals of Rome, the poetry of Virgil, the creations of Dante, and the philosophy of Benedetto Croce. From my ancient world, I first spanned the great seas to the new world. I am Cristoforo Colombo. I am Giovanni Caboto, known in American history as John Cabot, discoverer of the mainland of North America. I am Amerigo Vespucci, who gave my name to the new world, America. First to sail on the Great Lakes in 1679, founder of the territory that became the state of Illinois, colonizer of Louisiana and Arkansas, I am Enrico Tonti. I financed the northwest expansion of George Rogers Clark and accompanied him through the lands that would become Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I am Colonel Francesco Vigo. I mapped the Pacific from Mexico to Alaska and to the Philippines. I am Alessandro Malaspina. I am Giacomo Beltrami, discoverer of the source of the Mississippi River in 1823. I am Filippo Mazze, friend of Thomas Jefferson, and my thesis on the equality of man was written into the Bill of Rights. I am William Paca, signer of the Declaration of Independence. I created the dome of the United States Capitol. They called me the Michelangelo of America. I am Constantino Bruniti. In 1904, I founded in San Francisco the Bank of Italy, now known as the Bank of America, the largest financial institution in the world. I am A.P. Giannini. I am Enrico Fermi, father of nuclear science in America. First enlisted man to win the Medal of Honor in World War II, I am John Basilone of New Jersey. I am the million strong who served in America's armies and the tens of thousands whose names are enshrined in military cemeteries from Guadalcanal to the Rhine. I am the steelmaker in Pittsburgh, the grower in the Imperial Valley of California, the textile designer in Manhattan, the movie maker in Hollywood, the homemaker and the breadwinner in 10,000 communities. I am an American without stint or reservation, loving this land as only one who understands history, its agonies and its triumphs, can love it and serve it. I will not be told that my contribution is any less, nor my role not as worthy as that of any other American. I will stand in support of this nation's freedom and promise against all foes. My heritage has dedicated me to this nation. I am proud of my full heritage, and I shall remain worthy of it. I am an Italian American.
One of your finest hours, and you've had thousands of great moments, but that one there, Bob, is there any chance of buying that record? Because really, it was really chilling to listen to the way you did that.
Yes, there is. All a person has to do is drop a self-addressed stamped envelope to me here at the station, and they'll be advised. I don't have the post office box in front of me, but there's a post office box. If they write to me, I'll let them know.
Okay, I'm going to do that, Bob. Getting back now to Operation Short Change, I want to thank Senator Cardinale, who sponsored Senate Resolution 114, and he did this a long time ago. It goes back about 18 months. But the bill on October 8th, that bill came up before the Senate Transportation Committee, and Bob, it was passed unanimously. And what this bill means to all commuters is like a godsend. Right now, any bill that comes, anytime any of the authorities, like the Port Authority of New York, the Turnpike Authority, Garden State Authority, Delaware Authority, anytime they want to have a raise or raise the tolls, they have to now go before the legislatures to get this raise in effect. Not like they did before, just went to Governor Cuomo or Florio. They have to pass it through the legislatures, and it's going to make it a lot more difficult. And the end result of this bill, Bob, will save commuters millions and millions of dollars, untold millions. And that goes for truckers, commuters, and people in the general tri-state area. And I want to again reach out and say to Senator Cardinale, I thank him for his perseverance and his courage to take on the Port Authority, because I know a lot of people tried to reach out and told him not to do it. Anyway, Bob, I want to thank you, and I have a little message for my opponent, Roberto Torricelli. Can I say it?
Yes.
Roberto Torricelli, tuzi probiono gornud. Thank you, Bob.
On WABC. Checking in on the line right now. Hello, Patricia.
Hi, Bob. I'm calling about that call about the RU-486 pill.
Yes.
Okay, and I wanted to make one thing clear about whether people are for or against the abortion issue, is that a pill, if it's taken the morning after, is still doing the same thing it's doing a few weeks later, because what it's doing is if the sperm meets the egg, it's ending that cycle that has already begun. In some cases it won't be aborting, but in many cases it will be.
It is called effective by the French, British, and Swedish doctors in the first 9 weeks of a pregnancy. Beyond that, I don't know what else to tell you.
Right. No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is they're referring to this, calling it also a morning after pill. But it's still doing the same thing it's doing in the next few weeks.
Yes, indeed.
I think they're just trying to make it popular by taking away the abortion name.
Well, unfortunately, in this country, that may be necessary, because we have this fanatical prejudice which is tearing us apart on an issue that should not be tearing us apart.
Well,
it should be an individual choice.
Well, that's if you consider it not to be a life. I mean, is it a life or isn't it a life is the question.
Well, obviously you're a pro-life person.
Oh, yes. I very much believe in life.
Yeah, obviously. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We have to we consider ourselves a nation that believes in freedom. We are the cradle of democracy, and yet there are all these groups that want other people to do things their way. Hello, Mike. You're on WABC.
Hello, Mr. Grant. I'd like to take the time now on your show to give credit to those Russian people who hungered for democracy and who protested against their hideous war in Afghanistan. And those same people also protested against the war in Vietnam. And a lot of us liberal Democrats...
there weren't... wait a minute, hold on.
Including
Mike.
Mr.
What?
Clinton.
Mike, let me tell you something. There weren't protests against the war in Afghanistan because at that time the Soviet Union was still in the grips of totalitarian communism. Leonid Brezhnev, followed by Andropov, followed by Konstantin Chernenko, and then the reins were loosened bit by bit by Gorbachev, and the army came home. So don't equate what we had with what they had. And don't be a fake, phony fraud. Keep talking when I try to interject. You've lost your position on the phone because of that, you jerk. Hello, Bob. You're on WABC.
Yes, sir, Mr. Grant. I just want you to know I'm a long-time appreciator of yours, and I did like the thing you read there. I
sat here and I listened to it, and I thought, too bad somebody with a really good voice didn't read that, because it really would have been beautiful.
Mr. Grant, before I get to what I say, I just want to say one thing. Your voice is the voice a lot of people think is a great voice, so...
you know what? I can't stand it. I'm sorry I bothered to listen to that tape. I can't stand the sound of my own voice. I don't even know why I'm on the radio.
Mr. Grant, a lot of people listening to you, and I don't believe that the actions of these radical special interest groups are appreciated by most Americans, and I don't think these anti-Columbus demonstrators would even think to appreciate the fact that they're free to demonstrate in this country because of the actions of great people who undeniably migrated to this country from Central Europe. And these radical revisionists are in denial of everything, including themselves, and because they don't fit, they discredit anything which has purpose. And, Mr. Grant, that is their problem. But when I see all of these radical and minority and special interest and anti-American and anti-family values types clinging to a candidate like Bill Clinton like fleas to a dog, then I ask, how the heck does an intelligent person vote for Bill Klingon? That's Clingon. And if people don't believe me, you just got to spin the dial and you'll listen to these other programs, and that's just exactly what's there. Is these radical special interest groups, and they're clinging to Bill Clinton like he's their last chance on earth.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Bob.
Mr. Grant.
I'm going to ask the guy who keeps track. How many days till the election, Mike? How many days? After today, not counting today, 21. Grazie a Dio, only 21. I'll be so glad when it's over. I'll be so glad when it's over. I want to commend Mike McAlery. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't often have occasion to speak positively of Mike. But even though he has called me names in his column 4, 5, 6 times and refers to me in a very derogatory way, that does not prevent me from being able to recognize when he is right on target. And I think his column today in assessing the debate was excellent in terms of how he characterized Bill Clinton. But I also must tell you that Time magazine, in my opinion, has lost all credibility. It is no longer a news magazine. What it has become, and some of you might say it's a step up, some of you might say it's a step down. I say it is a new manifestation of the magazine. It is now a partisan, unequivocally pro-Clinton publication. The cover says the home stretch, Clinton in control. They make no attempt even to. They make no pretense at being repertorial or even-handed. And Michael Kramer, whom I knew when he was writing on the local scene, and who has always been a left-winger, an ultra-liberal zealot, says it's Clinton's to lose. First, the president's attacks backfire, then Clinton and Perot best him in the St. Louis debate. Only a miracle can save George Bush. And the photos that Time has chosen, of course, are photos where Clinton was speaking and Perot and Bush were listening and looking at him like he was the chief executive. Time magazine once was our premier national weekly magazine. Now it is a slick rag.
Hello, I feel very lucky to get on your show, and now I'm going to go play lotto afterwards. The reason I'm calling is after watching C-SPAN and all the other news shows, because I'm unemployed and I'm still voting for Bush, I hear that women, an overwhelming majority of women, who can apply character issues more than we can as men, except for the double-gated few, when applying the character issues to the two candidates, they will overwhelmingly vote for George Bush, and I think that will give him the swing that he needs. And as I said, I'm unemployed, and I'm still voting for Bush.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the call.
Thank you.
Tom, very quickly on WABC, you've got about 20 seconds.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Columbus had 4 ships, right?
3.
Oh, one went off the edge. Huh? What else am I going to sneak in? How come they didn't bring up adultery last night? What about that? They couldn't go, that affair.
Well, there's a couple of more debates to go. Maybe they'll do it then.
Yeah.
Tom, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna not count this call against you. You can call tomorrow, okay?
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
All right, you're a nice guy. That slams the lid on things for today. Until tomorrow, this is Bob Grant reminding you your influence counts. Use it, ABC. Let's say hello to Reed. Hello, Reed.
Hello, Bob.
Yes.
I'm glad that you concluded that last call by summarizing the 12 years versus the 8 years and what has actually happened, because it just so happens that while I was waiting, I happened to listen to June's call, and she's a perfect demonstration of what there really is leading me to believe that Clinton is a foregone conclusion, and it saddens me a great deal. and I know you're trying to fight the good fight, but the real issue, as I see it, is not whether we're going to get a Clinton or a Bush or a Perot, but the fact that the American people themselves are really making self-destructive decisions about themselves. You either have the Junes of the world who are sucked in by the argument that George Bush's presidency is typified by higher taxes, spending that has not been slowed, and an economy that is in serious trouble, and then here they turn around and ostensibly support a man who, on all three of those issues, is for exactly the problems that is causing and deepening this problem. Higher taxes, more spending, and an even weaker economy, and further drags on business that make things tick and create jobs.
It is an incredible irony that they are getting away with it. I remember at the Democrat convention listening to Al Gore sounds like a thug, and Slick Willie and other speakers bashing Washington, talking about those guys in Washington. There's got to be a change. And I'm thinking to myself, Al Gore was born in Washington, the son of a senator. Al Gore has been in the House of Representatives. Al Gore has been in the United States Senate. His whole life has been in Washington, D.C. He's part of the very problem he's talking about, and yet he acts like he's a total outsider. And you know what's sad, Reed? They got away with it.
Well, everything you're saying is exactly true, and I know that now you are focusing on the 25 or 30 days that remains, or whatever the number is, and therefore are dealing with the specifics of this election. But I believe that we would agree that the real problem, and it's going to be with us a lot longer than Bill Clinton, is the fact that the American people themselves are either doing one of two things. They are either acting like the Junes of the world and pointing fingers, in effect, at themselves and posing in a completely contradictory position to push for policies that are against themselves and can only make this nation more enslaved, less free, less productive, less competitive worldwide, more miserable for all of us, or they are just people who think in their blasé way that it doesn't make any difference, and it will make a great deal of difference, but the problem that's going to remain the longest is the people acting against themselves.
Reed, I want to thank you for allowing this program to conclude on a very insightful note. Thank you. That slams the lid on things for today. All 4 rounds have been approved for entry into the Radio Hall of Fame Museum. Until tomorrow, this is Bob Grant reminding you your influence counts. Use it.
Mario is underway taking chrono vaccine.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. 5 and 6 years old, those kids? Okay. Hello, Frank. You're on WABC.
Yes, hello, Bob. Yes, I'm Frank from Nassau, and I'm a conservative Republican, and I'll be voting to re-elect President Bush. I have a question for you, and also I'd like to mention the new book, Slick Willie. First of all, in watching the debate on Sunday night, I think the president did quite well. But Dan Quayle seemed to do dramatically better against his opponent last night. Do you think that the president made a mistake in insisting on the multiple questioner format?
Well, there's not going to be a multiple questioner format tomorrow. Tomorrow they're going to have Carol Simpson.
Okay.
And they certainly are going to have a lot of deference for her because they don't want to offend anybody.
Right.
And Carol Simpson, being a black woman, they're really going to cotton up to her. You know, they're going to be, you should pardon the expression, they're going to be polishing her apple all night long, you know.
Okay.
And then people from the audience are going to be allowed to ask questions. So it ought to be a pretty free-form exercise. Ross Perot will continue with his one-liners and his attempt to be the comedian. But I think maybe he'll grow a little stale halfway through, maybe even sooner in the program. And George Bush will knock himself out trying to be ever so polite and presidential that he won't make any point. He'll fall flat on his face. And Slick Willie will come out the winner.
Ooh, I hope you're wrong, Bob.
Well, I do too. Hey, you know, people get mad at me because I make certain predictions and they say, but I thought you were for Bush. I am. But what do you want? Just because I'm voting for the guy, I can't lie and say I expect him to do well in the debate. He stinks as a debater. He's the worst.
Yeah.
He's the worst. I mean, the only guy who could do worse might be James Stockdale, and James Stockdale would make up for floundering by virtue of coming up with a couple of one-liners. But no, well, listen, I'd vote for the president 20,000 times if I could, but he's no debater. That's why I say And even, that's the one thing Il Supremo and I agree on, you know, the Sfachim. Even he says debates don't really prove who's better for the job.
Right.
Okay.
All right, Bob?
Yes, sir?
Yes, I'd like to mention this new book that just hit the bookstores by the name of Slick Willie, subtitled Why America Cannot Trust Bill Clinton, by Floyd Brown. I haven't heard anybody mention it. But
well, it's not going to get much mention, and the bookstores aren't going to push it. As a matter of fact, you can't even get it in the bookstore.
Well, it just came out.
Yeah, who's going to carry it?
Well, Doubleday has it, and they have several copies of it, and I think, you know, you'll be able to get it, especially if it's asked for.
Well,
and if anybody that reads this, I can't imagine them, if they have an open mind, pulling the lever for Bill Clinton on
No,
November 3rd.
It's going to be a disaster. Bill Clinton's going to be a disaster for this country, and the only virtue I can see in his election is I'll be able to say, I told you so, but I don't want to have to say I told you so. Because, you know, whatever president we have, we should want him to do well because we're all in the same boat, right?
Right.
But he's going to be a disaster, and the American people are going to say, oy vey, what did we do? Thank you for the call.
Bob?
On WABC.
We're working for inclusion. We're working for inclusion, not divisiveness.
I'm not going to let you be heard.
All right, Howard.
Look at this. I guess
Now,
it
what
really
the parents,
That's Mike.
What the parents are experiencing in the schools is the following. The gays, I've given them credit, and I'm talking about their political agenda. What
You don't know what our political agenda is, Dr. Horowitz.
over the schools.
You don't
Let
Compromise,
what
Liz.
they say.
Try to be
They
fair.
say that federal encouragement and support for sex education courses prepared and taught by gay women and men presenting homosexuality as a valid, healthy preference and lifestyle as a viable alternative to heterosexuality. This is what we're against.
All right, thank you very much. I want to thank everybody who participated today, all the members on my panel, Dennis DeLeon, Mr. Ramirez, Reverend Ramirez, Liz Abzug, Dr. Hurwitz, Mary Cummins, Yehuda Levin, and Al LaFay. Thank you very much. Stay tuned on WABC from the Florence Gould Hall, 55 East 59th Street, for the highlight of the day. That's right, the Bob Grant program on WABC.
WABC, New York.
It's 3 o'clock. Good afternoon, sunny and 74 at 3 o'clock. I'm Tom Martin, WABC News, brought to you by the Discover Card. Attorney General William Barr has named retired Newark federal judge Frederick Lacey as his own special investigator to look into the Bush administration's handling of a case involving questionable loans to pre-war Iraq. Barr rejecting critics who have been demanding that he call for appointment of an independent prosecutor to investigate the case.
In the current politically charged environment, nothing could be worse than to have this matter tried in the press based on allegations, rumor, and leaks. No one's interests are served.